maybe we'll jump right in then. So for those that are new to this call, just as a quick introduction, this is our Friday edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. This is our open Q&A session. So our goal is that if you have any kind of questions about Salesforce technology, an issue at work that you're stuck on, raise your hand using the raise hand icon, and we'll see if a second set or what do we got here? 20 other sets of eyes might be able to help you out. So that being said, if anybody has any questions, just go ahead and click that raise your hand icon, and we'll go through them in order here. And I see that Stephen, you have your hand raised. Do you have a question or a comment?
Question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll share my screen. Nothing too secretive going on here. So basically what like the problem is I need to get events on people's calendars, but these people aren't Salesforce users. And then so I'm like trying to send out event record details from Salesforce to basically like an external email account. And then as I'm sending out, like, so I've got all the hyperlinks working as expected. And then I had it all working fine if it's like a normal, 1 hour event or things, but then you can have all day events. But then because like that date time is stored in GMT. And then so I'm just like having an issue of how I can display this like in the text body so that the person know, the event starts and ends this way. And so I'll just show you, so if I just, this is like record ID as an event. So if I just do the start date time there, that'll kind of display in the format that I want. But yeah, when it's an all day event, then I don't want it showing the time on the end. I just want it showing the date. And then so I tried to do a formula showing the start date time, but then it shows the GMT equivalent, if that makes sense. But
yeah.
Yeah, let me just run this again.
One more browser tab and you might hit critical mass here.
This is only one of the windows.
I've dealt with this before in flows, Stephen, where we had to have a flow that was out there for users to use on a general site, and they could be in whatever time zone. We didn't necessarily have their time zone. So we had to show stuff in the time zone of the particular location they were making an appointment at. And then keep our because internal users, it shows you in your time zone and when you're inside with the whole date time field, because they're a nightmare. And then the flow just gives you the GMT. So what we had to do was build is this going to be used by internal users?
Yeah.
So we ended up having to build a formula. I think we used case to do a formula that did the math on their time zone. So it would get the user's time zone, and it's written out. It'll be like America, New York or something, or America East. I can't remember, but you go find the time zones. And we ended up having to build a case formula that translated that into the number of hours that we then subtracted from GMT. And then you also have the fun of making the formula. I know your formulas don't scare you. So the more fun was to take into account daylight savings and how it may affect that offset, because you got to change that offset in the zones that are affected by daylight savings, since you're doing the formula to make the offset.
I just find it so interesting though, because like start date time here is showing, is what, month, day, year, then 12 p.m. And then this is the exact same one, but like wrapped in a text function, and then it returns as GMT.
And then since you don't have times in flow, you can only use date times to pull out times.
Yeah.
So that's what we had to do. Maybe you can do it without it, since you got it displaying in the two different ways. It's been a couple of years since I was on that project, but
yeah.
One question, you said flows don't have times. I'm assuming you mean like the time functions that you can use here?
The new time field, it doesn't. It's not a thing.
Is there any benefit of doing the formula on the record itself using a standard formula
field? You can't make
field?
a time variable, but you can make a date time or a date. Sorry, I cut you off, Bill.
No, I was just gonna say, I wonder, is there anything you could do within a standard formula field that you can't do within the flow, that you might be able to do the formula like on the record itself and then pull that into your flow?
And that's where we kept that formula to do the time zone conversion. We did keep it in a formula field.
Stephen,
on one of our objects.
Yeah.
Stephen, are you saying you have the issue with the older events, right? You're just trying to get the date there.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, like ideally,
Have you,
oh well, no, it's kind of like the opposite, right? So because I can get it showing, for date time nicely, but it's when like what I'm trying to show is when it's just an all day event, I just want to see the date, just
Right.
0307, nothing to do with the time and the end. And so that's kind of the issue when I'm trying to.
I mean, have you considered just like extracting it the way it is right now and converting it to text and just trimming it and then changing it? Again, there's a lot of formula, but changing it around if you want
Yeah,
to form it like the month in the front again.
The only issue with that's going to be timing if you are worried about the date line, because since it does store it in Z, it can catch you if it's a late appointment on, say, the East Coast, or if it's in Guam. I don't know where your customers are. So you might have to think about a buffer. Maybe check the date time to see.
Like all the hyperlinks still work, so I can still just like add it and that'll show the time. So maybe it just might not be worth the effort of displaying it in the text body as well.
Well, I mean, I like what Steven said. That works. Just do a date. You just use the formula to get the date value of your date time. But because it stores it in GMT, it might grab you the wrong date if you don't.
Yeah.
If you just don't just look out for that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks all.
Yeah. Hey, just one final question on that one. If you had a daytime field on a record, and then you created a formula field on that record that just did the conversion daytime to date in a formula field, and then displayed that in the flow, what does that display as? Like, does it do the translation correctly with the time zone thing, or is it based on the user that's running it as to which one they're going to see?
Probably.
Yeah.
It's been a minute, but I'm pretty sure it's based on the user that's running it. Yeah, the time zones are a fun, or not time zones in general, but date times are fun because of the whole. Actually, I get why they had to pick a time zone to be. We're going with universal standard time, but dang, if you can make a field the date field, that's something I talked with Gerald about recently on our side. If you have a choice between a date field and a date time field, use a date field if you don't need the times. Obviously, you do need times for part of your effort here. So
yeah. All good. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
If I can add, I put it in the chat, but I'm struggling with the term you're using, all-day event. When we're talking about dates and times, whose day are you referring to? Is it like my all day in Eastern time, my all day somebody in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole day of when the event will be. So like these people, there's kind of two use cases. So some of it's, like whatever, like a meeting is at 4:00, but then there's an all day conference, going across this weekend. And then so it'll be the 2 days of wherever the conference is held.
Yes.
But isn't that going to be a specific time?
Well, maybe one way of looking at it, Gerald, is, think about like Christmas, right? It's on December 25th, and it's all day on my December 25th, and it's all day on Australia's December 25th. It's just in general, it's on the 25th, right? So there's some things that I guess, like some events don't really have any kind of time thing. It's just to say that this day is when the thing's happening, regardless as to the time.
Yeah, the way it displays in a calendar is different, because you could have, like 9 till 5 on Saturday, 9 till 5 on Sunday. There's like two massive blocks. Or if you make something an all-day event, and it sits at the top of your calendar of your day view, so that for this entire day this is happening. But then you can, like, it won't be overlaying other events during the day. So it's like a UI change as well.
Right. Then wouldn't you use just like Ryan suggests, just the date field?
Yeah, but you
Because
need
in
that
the
time
date
for your other events. I mean, yeah, I do that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think Stephen, this kind of continues the trend of people talking about event management and Outlook and Gmail and how it integrates to Salesforce, and just being a little bit sad after they're done that part of the
Yeah.
conversation. It's just not easy at all, ever.
No, and then yeah, when they're not Salesforce users, like they're employees of the company, but not in Salesforce. So like you can't use Einstein activity to sync or anything. Should
Yeah.
solve all the problem as well.
Right. Any other thoughts or questions on Salesforce events? We want to continue the sadness of this topic. All right. Let's see. Any other questions or topics then that anybody would like to go through?
I would just like to make a comment that it wasn't until, I'm sorry to jump in, Scott, but it wasn't until recently in this group that I realized that you could change the size of the window for the formulas and stuff with dragging it from the bottom right corner. I don't know how I missed that before, but just be aware that it's there because it makes your life a whole lot easier, I found out. So
all right, hold on a second. I must have completely missed that. What is this now? So in Flow Builder you're talking about?
well, in a formula field, you've got, it gives you kind of a narrow window for entering formulas in. But it wasn't until I was in this group like last week and saw somebody grab the bottom right corner and stretch it down to open that window up to be a lot bigger than it was. Totally mind blown here because I had never seen that capability before. And I guess I never noticed that the bottom corner had a different kind of
Yeah, it wasn't always there. They brought it in a couple releases ago.
Are you talking about
been there a while.
This guy?
Yeah.
Oh, so I thought you meant like within screen flows as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can,
no, that's
Oh,
exactly
I
what
don't
I'm
think you
talking
can make
about.
this thing.
Thought it'd have been in screen flows too, Stephen, but I guess I missed it. But yeah, it's definitely useful. Change your life.
There you go. Yeah, whenever you can get away from wrapping within that field, just so you can kind of see the way you have it laid out in the formula, I think that's helpful.
100%.
All right. Yeah. All right, Scott, see you have a hand up. What do you got?
Oh yeah, so I've got a bunch of stuff, but I'll try to keep it simple today. So for example, on the task on a task record page, there's a comment section, or it's called, I think it's the description is the API name. But anyhow, when you look at it, and whatever the user inputs into there, it displays the full text of it. But when you go to edit it, it cuts it down to 3 lines, so you can only see like 3 lines of it. Is there any way to make it display the entirety of it, or is it the Salesforce always just gonna collapse it down to 3 lines?
Hold on a sec. Let's see here. So you're talking about like this here?
Comments. Yeah, there we go. Description information. Yeah, down there.
Now,
so if you had like 8 lines of comments, when you save the record and you're looking at it, it'll show it. Yeah, but they can
by
do
default,
that.
you mean?
Yeah,
you mean like by default?
Yeah.
So even if I put this in here, so let's do this. Let's copy this. Whoop. Copy, paste a whole bunch of this. So we got a really long comment. Click save. We can see the full comment on the layout here, but as soon as I go to, I guess, edit comments, it squishes it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good
question.
Is there
a way around that? Yeah.
I don't know. Let's
anybody
let's
knows.
The only place I can imagine is if we go to edit object here. Usually, like when you create new text area fields, it gives you the option to put the number of lines that you wanted to see.
It doesn't let you on this one.
Yeah.
It's a standard Salesforce field. They don't allow it, and even on your if you create a custom field to copy it in to make it easier for them or something, it'll be 10 lines max. So
yeah,
not worth the effort in any kind of way.
So, all right,
is that what it is? 10 lines max. So if I do like, can I not create a field here? I guess I got to go activities.
Yeah.
Create a custom.
And it limits you on what you can create on activities as well. I think I tried this.
Like text area. You can't do long. Huh?
You can't do long. No, They won't let you do that on activities.
That's lame.
Isn't that
okay?
Yeah. So was just checking to making sure to do my due diligence before I gave up on that one and told them they're just gonna have to drag it.
Yeah, that's yeah, I don't think there's any way around that one.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And no text very long on events. I guess they assume that events
No.
are going to be like, well, they have to allocate a certain amount of storage for each record that gets created. And I guess if you're having like high volume records, like tasks and events are kind of thought to be, I guess that's why they limit the text area.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think most of our record storage is made up of tasks and events. Like at least in my org, that's the majority of it is.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Or maybe that's just a very quick teaching point. So if anybody is not aware, when you're in your Salesforce work, if you go to your gear icon, go to setup, and then over in quick find, if you type in storage, you get to storage usage, and you can actually see a breakdown of the total available storage. What percent you have currently used, and then for that, for example, 6% that I'm using, what percentage of that is broken up by each individual object. So you can see, like in this Trailhead org that I have here, I'm only using 6%, and of that 6%, 20% of it is opportunity records, and we have 31 of them. I have no idea how often this gets updated, but it gets you close enough that if you wanted to kind of have an idea of how many records you have in your org, where you might want to focus your cleanup efforts or things like that, this is a great page to go to. Gives you a lot of information about that. And top users, who's using up all your storage, good stuff. So
Yeah,
if you're not
yeah.
aware of
Ours,
that,
ours is 46% tasks and 41% email messages. So
nice.
good to.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Hey, Bill,
Let's.
one thing to note on the storage too that I just learned. I just went through a license renewal, and if you drop your number of licenses, your data storage limit drops as well, unless you purchase the extra line item for additional storage. But your user count still affects it.
Yeah, I think it's. Let's see. I'm gonna try to pull up what the rule is. Okay, so here's what I just found here. Let's see if this is what you're referring to. So there's a lot of limits that are in Salesforce that are based on the number of users you have. Let's see, is this it here? Allocated 10 gigabytes for data plus incrementally added user storage. 10 users receive 10 gigabytes. Was it 1 gig per user? Something like that? Big object storage. Yeah, they don't actually say it very out clearly what the per user added storage is.
I right there, it's like 20 megabytes or something. You scrolled past the chart.
Oh, hold on a minute. Well, I thought that was specific to big object storage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, if I find that link that actually shows it broken up by the number of users, the number of storage, I will definitely share that in the chat and in Slack as well.
I think you were just hovering over it. If you scroll back down, it's like
Yeah,
10 gigabytes, 10 users. Yeah, there's 200 megabytes per user, something like that.
There you go. For example, a professional edition org with 10 users receives 10 gigabytes of data storage plus 200 megabytes for 10.2. Yeah, were they? I mean, besides me just doing the reverse math here, you think they would just come out and say one user receives X amount of storage for this license type? But I guess it's broken up by edition. That's where I was kind of going down here to the edition allocations. But I'm not going to look confusingly into the camera as I parse through all this to try to find the answer. But let's just pick one: Salesforce Professional Edition. Let's see, storage, recycling bin? No. Yeah, I have no idea. All right, well, I'll see if I can find that, or at least one example of that. But I thought they would call that out clearly here, but clearly not. So, okay, but yeah, good to know. Lots of limits in Salesforce based on the number of users you have. That includes things like data storage, like you mentioned, Philip, and then also things like API limits, number like API calls and things like that, like in a 24-hour period, certain things. something definitely to keep in mind. All right, let's see. Any other questions on that, or any other questions in general? Any other topics that anybody would like to go through? All right, no questions this week, huh?
Brian, can I bring up my issue?
I mean, think about anything that's client related and work related, and then if it's that issue that we're going to talk about later, you can. We can talk about it here if no one else has something. But Scott's got his hand up still.
Oh well, no. If you guys have something, that's fine. But yeah, you guys go ahead since I already had a question today.
No, that's fine. My stuff can go offline. It's not an issue.
Oh, okay. So I was just going to ask kind of a general question, to get some ideas. So, in my org, the org I stepped into a few months ago, my first Salesforce role, there seems to be an excessive number of record types on the case object. And I think that kind of predates my Salesforce knowledge as to why that would happen. Because I know now it's like different lightning setups, you can really you don't need to do that. But what would be like the approach to whittling that down and then getting getting it down to just a few specific record types from like every single like subcategory that they have created a record type for?
I'm going to pause and we'll see if anybody else has any feedback, and then I'll give you my take on this.
Sure. I mean, the very first thing I'd do is I'd like run some reports on the last created date for all the record types.
Mm-hmm.
If a record type hasn't been created in, like 3 months, you can probably just axe it straight away without talking to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like deactivate it. Yeah. And so yeah, kind of finding out there and then like what the differences are, if they're actually using different pick list values or things, or if it should just be like a drop down pick list.
Yeah.
Like
Well, there's about
category.
25 active page layouts right now, and about 50 different record types. So, but I'll have to see how often they've been used. Some of them I'm sure are probably rarely used.
What are their names? Because like I'm helping this one org, and they've got like opportunity record type 2021, opportunity 2022, opportunity 2022 semester 2.
You're right. Right.
So it's like, okay, they're not
I'll
useful
check
anymore.
I mean, okay, so we work in financial services. So these are case types for like all the different types of like requests, like ACH requests, annuity, beneficiary update, cancel draft, cancel payment, certificate deposit, check request, closed account, et cetera, et cetera. Money movement in, money movement out, money movement wire, money movement internal, new accounts, new client.
Yeah.
The list goes on.
Yeah, I think honestly, like Stephen said, I think a lot of times in Salesforce works when you look at things that people created, and this is absolutely true in my own Salesforce org, and Steve can attest to this, but sometimes you get that the good idea fairy, so to speak, and you start building a bunch of stuff and creating a bunch of things, and then you never use them. So I 100% agree with that as a first step. Creating a report on the case object, grouping it by case record type, remove all the filters, you get all the data, just to kind of get an idea of what the landscape look like. Because regardless as to the last 3 months or last year, whatever it is, if you look at that and you have 30 that are in your list, but when you group it by record type with the actual data, you only have like 7. Well, that right there, anything that's doesn't even have a record created, just kill those right away. One other thing that you might want to take a look at too would be and I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff here, what profiles actually have access to create all these different record types, and what users are in those. I think looking at the data first would definitely be the right step, but then looking to see who actually has the ability to create them. Maybe there's no active users right now that even have the ability to create these records. So
actually, that's another monster. Is I have to flip the security posture on its end because it's way too open. Like there's a whole bunch of people with modify all, and things are public read write, etc. So that's another thing I have to address.
Yeah.
If I can share my 5 cents on it,
Sure.
I would do a full business analysis on this, because it sounds, from what you just said, what types there are, it sounded a little bit like either someone misunderstood the relevance of a status field and a path on the
Right.
process, or if too many people had admin permissions, they just went ahead and created their own version of what they needed. So it probably makes sense to baseline with the team and say, hey, let's look at what we're using here. What are we doing? What is the goal? And then figuring out in the sandbox, how can we clean this up and get this all merged together? Because it sounds to me like it really just was an explosion of, hey, well,
Yeah.
I need that status. I need to show it in that way. We have a check request now. It sounds to me like a path there that hasn't been implemented on the page layout.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, definitely. So I think I should definitely do a deep dive and make sure get everybody on the same page and understand where these came from. So.
Yeah. One other thing to consider, Scott, I have no idea how you actually get on this path or what all the implications are, but we've worked with a few customers that, same thing, they've been using Salesforce for 10, 15 years. They made a lot of bad decisions over the years. And when they look at all their technical debt, everything that needs to be cleaned up and all the work that needs to be done, they make the decision that it's probably just easier to spin up a brand new Salesforce org, build it right from scratch, and then migrate the data and the people over to that new Salesforce org. And that turns out to be easier than trying to clean up the mess that's there. So that might be something to consider as well, depending on how messy that org is.
Yeah. Well, it's a big one. So yeah. That's something I hadn't considered, but yeah, that's definitely I'm glad you shared that with me. That's probably that may be the solution. But
yeah, and again, I have no idea how you start that process. I'm assuming you reach out to your account executive and they walk you through that. But
yeah,
something to consider.
All right, great. Well, thanks everybody for your input.
Right. All right. Any other questions on that or any other topics? I find that some weeks we go right up until 1 o'clock and we have like 4 hands in the queue and it's like a struggle just to try to get everybody in. And other weeks, people are just very content. They're like, you know what? I'm ready for the weekend. Like I'm done with my Salesforce questions for the week, and that's okay.
If you didn't have something ready, I know what Gerald wanted to talk about, I think, was custom permissions. What are they? How do they work? How can they help us differentiate between users? So I don't know that I have anything good in my demo org to show on that, though. I mean, we can do it.
I was going to say there's been about 3 different occasions where I had an issue and like on a Wednesday, and I was like, I'm going to take this to the office hours, and then like Friday morning I figure it out right before I come here.
Yeah,
and that happened this morning. So
well, that's good. That means everybody's learning, and you don't need our assistance. That's awesome. But I actually can I can give some basic examples for custom permissions that I think would be a good example of what you can use those for. Let me do this, and again, as it's kind of the nature of this call, I don't have anything prepared, but we can kind of wing it here.
Peter does have a hand up.
The issue I was working on this morning had to do with custom permissions, so I can say what my problem was and how I figured it out.
Yeah, go for it.
So one of my users wanted me to add a list of board members to the contacts for our org, but only wanted a handful of people to be able to see their contact information. So in the sharing settings, I set all the contacts to private. And then under account, I had to set contacts to private. And I was testing everything, and I just had some users that could still see the board member contacts that should not have been able to, and some of them still could not, the way it was supposed to work. And just this morning, I realized I needed to go through the profiles and make sure that none of them were set to view all under contacts. And then it started working correctly because I was so focused on the sharing settings. I forgot to check the object settings.
Yeah. Now, a couple of things here. So first thing, so before we get into the custom permissions, which is actually a feature, and when we're just talking about like custom permissions in your org in general, one thing I don't know if a lot of people are aware of, and I guess you can't see it unless I share my screen. So let me share my screen. So when you go into your profiles page, you can create a new list view. And if you're trying to get an idea of what profiles have view all data, right? So let's make that a test. We can say down here, so columns to display, you can actually say view all data, find, add that as a column, and then maybe I'll add modify all data as well. I think I have an extra space. No, good. All right, so modify all data. And then that job of trying to figure out what profiles have that permission is just a little bit easier because now you get the full list and you can see very clearly which ones have view all data and which ones have modify all data. All right, so a great way that, and I think that works for pretty much all the admin or the general permission settings that you have within Salesforce as well. Now, that being said, just very quickly, when we talk about custom permissions, again, there's like custom permissions that's lowercase, like just in general, what are your custom permissions in your org? And then there's the legit feature called custom permissions that's in Salesforce. Now, custom permissions, I think somebody mentioned this in the chat, great way to, have like one or two users bypass a validation rule. So for example, I can go in here, create a new custom permission. Yeah, go ahead,
Bill, I got this all opened up already. If you want me to
cool. Yeah, let's go for it.
demo this. Yeah, so I've done this for a few different client orgs. So like I'll set up a custom submission and I'll typically do one per object that I want to bypass. So they've got an IPO, invoice, and purchase order, and opportunity. And then so you just like custom permission is basically just the name, something obvious. And then the next step is you create the permission set. And once again, I just use the same name. And then you add the custom permission to the permission set. And then you can reference that in your validation rule. And then sometimes I'll also create a permission set group. And then I'll add those validation rules to the group. And then so in future, if, down the line, they've only got a couple validation rules in this org, but if I wanted to add like account bypass or case bypass, I could just add it all to the group and I wouldn't have to change any new things like the integration users or the one or two super users that we've got there. Yeah.
You wouldn't happen to have a validation rule that actually references that custom permission, would you?
Yeah, that's.
And I got to tell you that building that out as like a validation rule bypass framework, just so that it's ready to go if you ever need it. That's brilliant. With the permission set groups, putting them all in there. Smart.
Yeah, I think that was my first exposure to them. And then there's lots of other uses for them on your Lightning pages to show certain fields or not. Custom permissions are a great way to do that. And while he's pulling it up, anyway, I'll give it back to you, Steve.
Yeah, look at that. Even commented it. God, I'm good sometimes.
Unbelievable.
Not all the time. Yeah, and then so it's basically if they don't have this permission, then it'll fire. So you just want to put the not or the exclamation mark.
Yeah. And then somebody had mentioned about, so this covers the validation rule use case where you basically can take that permission set of that group, assign it to a user, and then they would bypass this validation rule. Somebody else mentioned about Lightning pages as well. Stephen, I don't know if you have this one this set up, but essentially it's the same thing. You if you have that custom permission in one of your custom permission sets or your profile, and it's assigned to you, you can use your visibility filters on the Lightning page to say, only show this to people that have that custom permission. So another great way to have like a small piece of functionality that you would expose to like one or a few people. You create the permission, assign it to them, and then do the visibility filter based on that permission.
And I think they're bringing that to tabs soon as well in Lightning Pages.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Great.
You can stick these on profiles as well as permission sets, by the way.
Yeah. All right. So any questions on custom permissions, capital or lowercase? All right. Peter, I see you have a hand up.
Yeah, hello again. So being the new guy on the block and not even part of Salesforce yet, like I said, I spoke with Dave Anderson a couple of days ago. It was my first interview, phone screening, and trying to get a fellowship with Salesforce for this upcoming cohort with hiring our heroes. So my question is, and then I'm not sure, and you can stop me if this is not the right forum. So I'm just wondering if y'all can speak about, I guess, the culture within the company, right? The culture within Salesforce as I try to make, is this the right fit for me? And then if Dave was talking about the sales team and the customer success team, if anybody can speak about like day in the life, I guess, of a account executive within the sales team or a customer success manager on that team. What's the day in the life of those two roles?
No, I definitely don't feel like I'm qualified to speak about the corporate culture within Salesforce. Anybody have any thoughts there? Anybody have any experience working for Salesforce? Otherwise, I can give my opinion of what I see from the outside. But yeah,
I do. So I'm a big fan of working with small companies. So my greatest experiences, as far as interacting with others, feeling connected, that kind of stuff, has always been with smaller, more agile, growing companies. Working at Traction on Demand, we were acquired by Salesforce. So now we're Salesforce employees. I and a bunch of others, coming from this small connected company, suddenly felt very disconnected. It's 74,000 employees. I was on 3 different projects. All of the project people were different, so no real continuity. And I personally really struggled with a company that size. And now I'm with Higher Echelon, and I'm kind of back to that smaller, growing company and feeling connected. So that was my experience working with Salesforce.
Now, one caveat that I might throw in there, and not that I've worked for Salesforce, but working for big companies like Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, 300,000 people at the time. I really think it also depends on the team that you're part of as well. You could be part of a giant organization, but if you're in a smaller knit team, that can go a long way to feeling connected and things like that. I don't know if you guys can hear my dog, but she's going crazy right now.
Yeah,
the other thing too.
Dog.
Yeah, I say the other thing too is it also depends, I guess, a lot on where you're working as well. I mean, if you're on going in the office and there's kind of a lot of folks doing the same, that kind of helps with feeling connected within the larger organizations versus going into a big corporation like that and working from home. I could see how that could lead to being a little bit disconnected. But yeah, anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I was just gonna say that David Nava's YouTube channel, there's some pretty in-depth episodes of the Wednesday night MTOH where they have account executives for Salesforce and some other folks that have been working at Salesforce talk about their jobs. So that would be a good place to start.
Yeah, great point. I'm going to try to grab that link. If anybody has it handy and wants to throw that in the chat, that'd be awesome. Again, for those that might be new to office hours in general, we have several different sessions that are available. We have a Monday night off the record chatter. We have a Wednesday night career branding session, Thursday night coding with Sally for developers, and then of course the OG, so to speak, Friday session open Q&A. And as a side note, whenever anybody says MTOH, I feel like we need to have like our own hand signal for that. It seems like something you want to throw up like a sign, like MTOH, you know. But yeah, I'll have to work on that. I'll spitball that over the weekend. But yeah, so I don't know, Peter, if that answers your question. I think it's really just, it depends. I think it depends on the team, the group, your management, coworkers, you know, all that kind of stuff kind of goes into whether or not it's a, you know, the experience that you would have working for them, I'd say.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback. I mean, any and all feedback as I transition into a new career is helpful. So I appreciate all the information.
Yeah, one thing I will say, just to kind of throw it out there, maybe not like, again, I have no experience with the company itself, working within the organization, but working within the ecosystem, that I feel that I or many other people on this call can kind of speak to. And one thing I would say is that there always seems to be somebody that's willing to help, right? So getting into Salesforce in general, compared to other technology platforms, I mean, there's just the community, and this isn't just me drinking the Kool-Aid, right? I mean, it's just, I don't think you can match the community in any other technology platform or space, right? I think it's just, there's so many different ways to get connected to people, so many people volunteering their time to try to, you know, help educate people, so many different opportunities to join, you know, different groups and whatnot. So in that case, I think somebody coming into a new career, something to do with Salesforce, I think it's kind of nice that you just have that huge Ohana / community that's out there that's willing to help. So yeah, I definitely think, and again, I feel like, you know, I don't get paid by the number of times I speak highly of Salesforce, but I really can't speak more highly of Salesforce. I mean, the community, the fact that, you know, I'm an ISV partner, I was able to build a business on the platform. There's just so many different things that I could speak about, but you could do worse, put it that way.
I appreciate it, Bill. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Greg, you have a hand up? What you got?
Well, going back to the isolation of data, I worked for a large insurance company, and they had high roller, or not high roller, but high visibility customers, and they didn't want actual employees looking up Taylor Swift's home information or something. So what we did is we used roles to isolate the people that were high value customers, and that way everybody, they wouldn't show up in searches or anything, but upper level managers could then see everything because their role hierarchy was near the top. So, and we use the same type of technology, or that method, to combine two small orgs together as one. That way each org didn't see each other's data. So that's just commenting on that. My actual question is, does anybody have any good documentation tool for going through code? I inherited somebody, they would call a procedure to just see if there's an I in the name. I mean, it's just, you go like 12 layers deep to find out, oh, they're just checking to see if there's an I in the name, and then it rolls back up, and the code's all over the place. So anybody have a good tool? I've been looking at Visio, I've been looking at Lucid, but they want like $500 a year for me to be able to integrate with Salesforce. That's my question. How do you document your code so that the new guys can learn it quickly?
Well, a couple things there. So as far as like documenting out code, like mapping out logic and things like that, internally I use Lucid for that, specifically Lucid Spark, which I think just gives you a lot more flexibility with, like, you know, mapping things out, putting tables on the screen, you know, having like sticky notes, all that kind of stuff. That's what I use. But I think you know, that's great for like building something from scratch or getting your thoughts down for like some kind of new piece of logic. But if you have kind of a big mess that you're trying to map out, are you looking for something that's more like an automated tool that you would just feed your code and it would kind of spit you out like a process map or like a method map?
That's called an ideal world, but I I've started using Excel, and I just keep adding columns to show how far deep the calls go, and then I know where to go back to. Because when a trigger fires, it calls this one program, the helper calls a utility, and the utility, it goes all the way down to verify that the account is active, let's just say. And then all those collapse back, and then you go to the next step. And it's really tough keeping track of where the hell you're at.
Yeah, one thing you could do, just kind of map things out without having to worry about like the cost so much of getting one of these kind of subscriptions like the Visio or Lucid. I've seen people do it with PowerPoint, right? So you create a big block that represents a particular class, and then within that big block, you have individual blocks for the different methods and things, and then you just use the lines to start connecting things, right? So that's one way. Essentially, it's like a Visio Lite, just using PowerPoint or Google Slides even, just to create shapes and connect things. As far as an automated tool, I don't know. Anybody aware of any kind of tooling like that exists right now?
You mean in the sense of a process chart that would be that would extract it and do it? Like
No, yeah, like essentially if you had a trigger that calls a helper class that calls a sub-helper class and different methods within them, and it's returning and it's calling other stuff, like basically be able to feed it a trigger and 3 class files and then have it kind of map out, what things are calling what. You kind of see like a flow of where your code is going.
Yeah, I mean, Elements Cloud extracts the system, right? And they are at a point where they can actually show the processes or build a process flow in a visual form. However, I'm not sure if it goes as deep as the triggers. And I mean, I'm about to explore that in the next couple of months. I haven't had a chance to purchase it yet. As a consultant, you can get a consultant license for $500 and then use it for all the clients. But it's a little bit more expensive if you're an individual client. You just want to use it for your own environment. But it might be worth it just checking it out to see if it does it.
I've heard the name a lot, but never used it. So it seems.
And
pretty
so far,
powerful.
I've been just using what is it? I mean, I'm building out the processes typically. I'm not documenting triggers so much. I typically just put them in stories that I know where they are at. But actually, what you're doing is very thorough and very good to understand where you're at with what those triggers and do to each other. And yeah,
it's like outside contractors, and everybody did things their own way. And I'm now the first full-time employee at the company for Salesforce, and we hired another person for starting Monday. And I'm embarrassed that I don't have any of this documented. I've tried, but you get frustrated because you get so deep, and then you forget where you return back to.
Yeah, I think the easiest thing might just be to start with something simple like a Google Slides or a PowerPoint, and just create the kind of diagrams. I hesitate to even suggest this, but I wonder if you feed a few files into something like Chat GPT, if you could say, create me a diagram of this. I know they have some GPTs that are specific to like Visio. I think Lucid might have one as well on OpenAI, that you can feed it information and have it spit out some kind of process diagram. Never tested it, have no idea about the security and all that kind of stuff. So use that with caution. But
this morning I turned on logging for Finest for Apex code, and it's supposed to terminate at noon today. And then I'm going to import the logs into a database where I can strip out anything that references a program or a procedure. It's experimental at best right now, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, I don't know if you necessarily have to go to the finest, but when you look at those Apex logs, and this might be getting a little bit far in the weeds here, but something that I'll probably spend the rest of my day just kind of dorking around with. But if you actually take an export of a log, whenever you're calling another method, there'll be a line in there that says like, calling this method, and then it'll say like returning from this method within the log, something similar to that, right? And I wonder if you just did some, run a test, like execute the operation, whatever the trigger is, and then just did some creative, find and replace, remove all the junk, and just whatever you're left with is just those, entering and exiting lines. I wonder if that can get you pretty close to kind of mapping out what's calling what.
Well, that's what I'm looking for, and
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, please let us know how that works out. Whatever you decide, I'd love to hear how you end up doing that. All right. Any other thoughts on this before we open it back up to questions? We have about 7 minutes left here. All right. Anybody have any other questions or topics that they wanted to go through for today? All right.
Is this the first?
It might be. I don't know. I think just must be a really productive week for folks. Just inspired week, no questions. That's good.
I'm hitting multiple topics, so.
Yeah, anybody, well, yeah, Gerald, yeah, if you have a question, then I was going to ask a general question, but go ahead.
So I have, I wanted to add a new field to the user object. And Ryan, you got a different solution, but I'm curious about this. So I add a new field, a text field, pick list, whatever. In the flow under the user, I can see that value. I can access it. What I can't do is show it on the page layout. And
Show
I'm not
on the user
sure
page
what
layout?
On the user page layout. Like when I am in setup users, I go there, I can't
Yeah, you should be able to.
this. Yeah, I know.
Did you make sure to put it on permission set for yourself to be able to read it? Maybe you just can't see it, Gerald. But we'll take a peek at it.
That's what I'm worried about it. But okay.
Because that should show up. I've added plenty of fields to user, not that I'm proud of it, and they show up.
Well, there's two layouts, right? So the profile page and the page layout, you have to make sure you drop it on the right one. That also comes in sometimes that you get to the wrong page.
Oops. I was hearing you say page and I typed page. I meant to type some field. All right, let's just do this real quick. So yeah, when you add a new field to the user layout or the user object, it'll add it to your page layouts by default, or you can select to do that. And then just the one thing to keep in mind when you go to that page layout, if we go to user layout, let's see. So it'll add it, but it's going to add it under all like the standard things. So that's one thing to keep in mind. That's like it should be at like the very bottom. What are these other things here? User profile page layout. What's that? Oh, that's the page that you would see like if you're a user looking at the user record, I guess, like the profile page.
Yeah, that's what I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, this page, I guess it is. Yeah. So you should be able to add it to both. So if you did and you're still not able to see it, then yeah, I think the permissions would probably be the next place that I would go.
Okay.
Yeah, and let's actually say, some field, there we go. So it's right there. Okay. I didn't notice, I see that field there when it went. Some field.
No, it didn't show up.
Yep, there it
is. I see it.
There it is.
Yeah, so I think permissions would probably be the first place that I would look at there.
Okay.
Yeah. Very cool. Any other questions or topics for today? Our last few minutes that we have here. For those that might not be aware, these sessions are recorded. So we do post these to YouTube. So I usually post this up on LinkedIn whenever the recording is done processing. I throw it in our Slack workspace as well. So if there's anything that you wanted to watch back, you can go back there and look at it. And I try to pay attention during the call. If anybody shares anything that's, private or personal or things like that, I try to blur them out on the recordings. So just if you want to go back to any of our past sessions, it's definitely available on YouTube. So, all right. Well, any final questions before we part ways here? All right. Well, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we will catch up next week. Thanks all.
Bye.